told that real Italians don't eat spaghetti and meatballs. They do, just not the way we think. In central Italy, there is a dish in the Abruzzo region called pasta alla chitarra con pallottine, served with tiny meatballs. The glory of these tiny meatballs is that they fit on your fork. They marry the pasta so that every bite gets pasta and meatballs. We're going to start out by making our meatball mixture. We're just going to beat 1 egg, and we're going to add our seasonings. We've got some chopped parsley. We've got some nutmeg, which is very traditional to meatballs across Italy. Some salt and pepper, of course, and a little bit of grated Parmesan. We found that the best way to approximate the cuts of meat and the fattiness and the flavorful meat that we had for meatballs in Italy is actually to use meatloaf mix, which you can usually find at the meat counter. It's a combination of veal, pork, and beef. Now, if you can't find that at your butcher shop or in your grocery store, just use a ½ pound of each of ground beef, 80% lean, and ground pork. It'll still be delicious. We don't want to overwork our meat because we don't want to make it tough, but we do want to make sure that the seasonings cut all the way through and flavor this delicious meaty blend. And we're going to make a very simple red sauce. I love how they did this in Italy. You know, the sauces in Italy are not overwrought. They're just simple ingredients that are allowed to cook and shine. So we're going to take a little bit of olive oil in our pot. As soon as our oil is hot, we're going to add our sofrito, which is just chopped celery, chopped carrots, and chopped onion. And we're going to cook that down a little bit, caramelizing the natural sugars in the vegetables. So we're going to get a ton of flavor out of these without a lot of work. To that, we're going to add a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper, some more parsley, of course, and very important secret ingredient here, some tomato paste. And what we're going to do with this tomato paste is let it brown and caramelize and get sticky and frankly kind of yucky looking on the bottom of the pot. That's what we want. That's a good thing. Because what's happening is we're not just concentrating its already concentrated flavors, but we're also caramelizing the natural sugars in it, and that's going to add tons and tons of flavor. All right, our sofrito has started along its happy way, and now a way that we found to add just that extra dimension of richness to this sauce, we're adding about 1/3 cup of our meatball mixture. Now, this is not going to turn it into like a thick ragu. We're just going to cook it in, and it's going to release fat and juices and flavor, savory richness, and it's really going to disappear into the sauce. This is going to cook for a total of about 8 to 10 minutes. And you can see the browning happening here. That's a good sign. Now that we've built up all this deep, rich flavor in the bottom of our pot, we can add our tomatoes. Now, we've just had a can of whole peeled tomatoes that we've crushed by hand. We like that better. We find the flavor is better than the pre-crushed ones. We're going to add a little bit of water and just a little bit of sugar. The beauty of all that liquid is it's now deglazing the bottom of this pot. So all of that tomato paste that we've caramelized, all that meat that we've cooked down, all those vegetables that we've caramelized, we're pulling that out into the sauce now. So we're going to let this simmer for about 30 minutes while we make our meatballs. I learned the meatball making technique from a woman named Luisa Carinci on the coast of Abruzzo. She was very specific about this. She said a teaspoon is just about the right size. She said that plenty of people make them smaller, and she says she doesn't like to do that because they tend to dissolve into the sauce. Don't worry about forming them. They don't have to be perfect. They're going to hold together just fine in the sauce. They're actually cooked very briefly in the sauce, which is very important. It's part of what keeps them nice and tender when they're done. Tradition has it that the reason American Italian restaurants pair large meatballs with their pasta is because a lot of the Italian immigrants to the United States come from southern Italy, and they brought with them their large meatball tradition. Now, those meatballs were never served with pasta in those parts of Italy. But when those immigrants got to the United States, two things happened. First, they suddenly had more money. They also had more meat. And when that happened, and this is attributed to the Italian restaurants in New York City, they started blending the two. So suddenly you had monster meatballs on plates of pasta. All right, almost as important as the meatballs, the pasta, of course. The name of the dish comes from the name of both the pasta and the tool used to make the pasta, and that is chitarra, which is Italian for chitarra. The way the pasta is made is sheets of dough are rolled out really thin and placed right on the wires. And then you use a pin and you press it through, cutting and creating these squared off strands. Now this is very important because it's a rough cut pasta, and that means that when that pasta cooks, it is releasing more starch into the water, and the sauce is also going to adhere to it better. So we're going to cook this up. Now, of course, you can use any pasta you want, but if you don't use chitarra pasta, which you can find in most grocery stores these days, at least try to get a bronze die cut pasta, because unlike kind of traditional pastas available here in the United States, bronze cut pasta is rough on the edges. Now, we are going to kind of wildly undercook our chitarra pasta. We're going to finish cooking the pasta in the sauce, and that way our pasta isn't just absorbing water, it's also absorbing flavors. We're going to cook it for probably a total of like 5 to 7 minutes max. It should be just barely tender on the outside, but still quite firm on the inside. While our pasta cooks, we are going to finish the meatballs and the sauce. Now we're just going to, a few at a time, grab our little meatballs and plop them into our simmering sauce and stir ever so gently. Again, we're not going to cook these for very long because we want them to retain their kind of tender, moist bite. But that's a lot of tiny meatballs for this amount of sauce, and that's what makes it so wonderful. You get a ton of meatballs per ounce of pasta, and you're going to get a lot of them in each forkful. A lot of times we encounter meatballs that are tough, and there's a couple of reasons for that. One, we tend to overcook them. Two, we tend to focus in the United States very much on browning and searing our meatballs. In Italy, we found, especially with this recipe, they just don't waste time with that. You're getting tons of flavor anyway with all these other ingredients. You don't need to worry about the browning. Our pasta is just not even close to al dente. That's okay, that's the goal. That's what we want here. Now, you could drain this. I'm not gonna bother. I am just gonna take my tongs and transfer my pasta, my chitarra, directly into my sauce with meatballs. Now, one, this is easier. I don't have to mess a colander, but it also brings some of that starchy pasta cooking water with it, which, as we know, is the secret ingredient to so many sauces. We are going to toss this, and we're going to cook it for about another 5 or so minutes. We want the pasta to absorb the extra liquid that's in our sauce. We want all that flavor from the tomatoes, from the Parmesan, from the nutmeg, from everything that's going on in this pot, from those meats. We want it to infuse the pasta so that every bite is flavorful through and through. You know, a sauce shouldn't just coat, it should permeate the pasta, and that's what we're doing here. We're also going to add a little bit more Parmesan cheese because why not? It's delicious, and it's going to help thicken everything up. And we are going to add a little bit of our pasta cooking water. Start with about a 1/4 cup. Those natural starches that our rough cut pasta released are going to help thicken up our sauce and make it rich and creamy and give the pasta the extra liquid it needs to finish cooking. Nothing wrong with adding a little bit more extra virgin olive oil, tablespoon or 2, maybe more. I don't think they're allowed to measure olive oil in Italy. They just have to use copious amounts of it. There we go. Oh, that's perfect. I think we're good. We're going to take our chitarra and meatballs off the heat. Perfectly al dente pasta, perfect meatballs, nice and tender, and that's it. This is our perfect, real Italian, real spaghetti and meatballs eaten by real Italians. Oh my God. This is childhood in a bowl. This is mom making spaghetti and meatballs, but better. You get meatballs in every bite, and the pasta is perfectly cooked, and the meatballs are nice and tender and flavorful, and the flavor of the meatballs permeates the entire dish.